Ready to break free from the grind and build wealth on your terms? Meet Nathan Murith, husband, father, tech executive, real estate investor, coach, and all round life juggler. Nathan's passion is helping busy professionals and parents like you create extra income and generational wealth through real estate without the stress and without sacrificing what matters most. Today, we'll dive into how to focus, pick the right market, and build your dream team in real estate. Let's get started. Hey, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hey Ariel, thanks for having me. How you doing today?
Good. And I've been super excited to have this discussion from another remote real estate investor. Before we dive into your deals, your motivations, would love to hear a little bit more about your background and what led you to where you are today.
Well, that's a lot to talk about. I'll try to keep it short then. Born and raised in Europe, I moved to the States for grad school. I got into technology, so my background is software engineering. By day, today I am a technology executive, so I manage technology groups and teams. I've always loved technology and loved building technology products, and maybe even more so, the teams that build the products and bring value to customers, and that's what it's always been a passion of mine. And as you and your listeners likely know, when you're in the technology space, a lot of your compensation is tied to the stock market and very specifically to the company that you work for in the stock market. And when I had kids, I started thinking a lot more as, things happen when, people have kids that, people tend to change, myself included. And I started thinking a little bit more about the future and what I wanted for myself, for my wife, for our family, for our kids when we weren't going to be around anymore. And that's when I started gaining interest in kind of diversifying my investments, kind of diversifying from being only exposed to the stock market through my employers, and just being in the technology and space in general. So I started, looking into real estate a bit more. And then I heard somebody on some podcast, I can't remember because this is years ago now, but said something along the lines of, my first child was born, I bought them a rental property, put it on a 15-year mortgage, have, placed a tenant in there. The tenant's paying down this, 15-year mortgage. And by the time my kids, college age, will have a $200,000, $300,000 asset paid off that generates, $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And that'll be my kids' college fund. And I just thought that idea was a genius idea. And I just, that, I don't know if it was the catalyst or if it was the little push that I needed. And then I just, kind of went all in, did my whole, education thing. I got to figure this out, how to do this, how to get started. And then bought our first rental property for our first kid. And then the second one came quickly thereafter. And then we had a second kid. So we said, oh, we should get this second child there, college fund property as well. And, one thing led to the other. And that's how I got into this essentially.
That is excellent. You're taking on big challenges, you're leading teams, and then once you start a family, you're thinking about how can I provide for them in the long term? And you come across, whether it's a podcast or a book, talking about how to support your children via real estate.
It might have been. Yeah, honestly, I can't remember. It helped me. It was that little push, like I said, maybe that I needed to really go all in. So that's what we've implemented. And then some.
A lot of people have this aha moment, right? Of like, you know what? This is going to be the strategy that works for me. But then they have a blocker of like, how do I actually learn about real estate? So let's dive a little bit more into that. What were some of the resources or ways that you ramped up your knowledge within this space?
There was a lot. I started with whatever I could find online. You start searching, and then as soon as you start Googling, investing in real estate, you get a lot of noise, but then you also pretty quickly land on, bigger pockets, because that's one of the biggest networks and platforms out there for real estate investors. And then that led me to, different names and name brands in the space that just contribute more, talk more about, real estate investing, which leads to then, podcasts and books and YouTube videos, and articles and blogs and online, platforms for help and coaching. I did all of the above for probably about 6, maybe 8 months before I really did anything with it. That was the gist of it. There's just so much out there in general in terms of information, but then the real estate investing space is also extremely broad and diverse, and there's so many ways that you can do it and so many ways that you can be successful that pretty quickly you get overwhelmed. Every day I found something new and, a kind of a different shiny object. And I was going to, look into that, research that, read up on that, get the next book on that. A lot of time just reading and consuming stuff.
And I completely agree. There's pros and cons with real estate. The pro is that you could really make the path your own. But then the con could be like, there's
Yeah.
so much information. What should I gear towards? That even relates to tech. Like, tech has so much in it. And you can't know everything within tech, or even in my own field, data science, I can't know every single thing. But if you can kind
Yeah.
of make it your own and have a focus, that helps. So when it comes to you, when you're looking to make this focus or this buy box for your first deal, how did you start to
Mm-hmm.
formulate what you wanted to look for in a property?
That's a great question, being in the technology space yourself, right? But I wanted to take, the smallest, simplest step first and then iterate and evolve and improve from there, kind of one small step at a time. And for me, what that first or smallest possible step kind of in the real estate investing space was just looking at single family homes, right? Because you could do a million different things: syndications, mobile home parks, storage units, small multifamily, commercial, note investing, the foreclosures, all this stuff, right? That just felt confusing to me, at least. The simplest thing for me to comprehend at the time was, well, I understand one house, one address, one tenant, one property tax bill, one mortgage, one roof, one heater, one HVAC unit, things like that. So just, I'm going to start with that because I can comprehend that more or better than all of these other things that I knew nothing about. Right. So that's how I laser focus on that. Listening to, folks online like, Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time, who I really highly recommended for anyone in the space. But one of the things that he's always said is just, focus on one thing, ignore everything else. And that was one of the hardest things for me to do, is to kind of ignore everything else and just stay focused on those single family homes. But that's what I did. And bought the first single family home and then bought some more, and now several years later I understand more of these different aspects of real estate and I can more easily get into them. The simplest thing in my mind is a house, and I can understand a house and all the things that I mentioned about one house.
I think that's a great way to start off, right? Because sometimes we fall into the trap of Instagram Reels or TikTok, and it's like, hey, you can get started tomorrow in real estate and own a 100-unit building. And then you go
Yeah.
down this rabbit hole and you're getting pulled apart to different directions. But it's very okay to start off with what's familiar, what you can wrap your head around to begin with, because real estate is a journey and not just like one single action that will then set you up.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It really is about the journey, in my opinion.
So you are the remote real estate coach. So I'm assuming that maybe your first or second deal, you end up going out of state. So could you give an overview of like what your market is today that you live in? What's the one that you invest in, and how did you break that barrier to invest out of state?
Yeah, so I live in the Bay Area, California, so high cost of living. The median price of a home around here is, but probably a million and a half. So for those who are into real estate at least a little bit, they probably can appreciate and understand that that is not necessarily a property that would cash flow unless you put a million or $1.5 million down and pay for it, flat out, which is not money that I had. So just investing locally, especially if I, step back for 1 second, I wanted to invest for cash flow. I was interested in finding a way to put my money to work for it to generate more income for myself, meaning I was not interested in investing in real estate for the potential that appreciation might bring. So cash flow, 1.5, let's just say $1 million homes in the area that I was living in, kind of a non-starter for us and for us getting into real estate investing. So we pretty much immediately started looking out of state because we couldn't do it locally. And whether you look, in California, 5 hours away from where I live, or you look 3 states away, at that point, there's no real difference. And, I went through a phase of just kind of understanding, based on our goals, which were cash flowing rentals, what kind of markets to look at. And you can pretty quickly eliminate and zero in on several potential markets. You kind of get rid of the coasts because those are typically very, cyclical or, appreciating, markets. And then I wanted personally to stay away from the South where a lot of people go, the Sun Belt, just because they're more environmental, hazards potentially, if you think 30 years, 50 years down the road when we hand these properties down to our kids when we're no longer here. So that kind of left the middle of the country, which are quote unquote the boring markets, right? They're more predictable, maybe easier to understand. And then when I kind of narrowed in on, one or two cities, I, looked into different metrics and things like that. And then it was just a question of actually looking at the properties themselves and what I could potentially buy in, city A, B, or C, kind of in the Midwest. So once I identified those things, because I'm obviously not local to those locations or that city that we ended up picking, it was all about putting the time and effort into building my team out there locally. So property managers, lenders, contractors, the people that would help me run this rental property. So spent enormous amounts of time just networking with other investors, around the nation in that particular market, kind of building my team. Once that was done, in a sense, the hard work was done. The quote unquote, easy part was finding the property that met my investment goals. And that, in a sense, was almost the easier part than everything leading up to it.
What an incredible framework. And for anyone who is looking to get into real estate, please play that back the last 5 minutes. I think you had a really great point of demonstrating that before you dive into, what property should I invest in, you're thinking holistically about your goals and your risk tolerance. So your goals being able to cash flow, predictability, hold for a long period of time, risk in terms of environmentally friendly states that maybe not be susceptible to hurricanes and other environmental hazards, honing that in together, and then from there selecting maybe 3 to 5 markets and starting to build a team. So I think that's tremendous. And did you read this in a book, or how did you formulate the step-by-step process?
Short answer, because I read so many books, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one exactly necessarily I read this in, but it was generally, I'm pretty risk averse. And if I'm risk averse, and like I said, I'm an engineer, I was born in Switzerland, so maybe I'm a Swiss engineer, meaning I'm extremely rigid and type A type person. So it was like, even without necessarily reading books, I'm not going to jump into, just my personality is not one that would just jump into, even if it's say like a $30,000 down payment, for a $150,000 home or whatever. I'm not going to jump into that without doing, a lot of homework and due diligence and prep and worst case scenario planning and all this stuff. To more directly answer your question, one theme that I heard consistently when networking with other successful investors, typically remote, but even local, investors who invest in their own market, was, something along the lines that, real estate investing is about the team, your team, not the property per se. And I kept hearing that over and over and over again. And in my simple mind, it was like, if these successful people are all saying the same thing, that same thing must be extremely important. So let me focus on that. It was, of course, again, networking and talking with other successful investors who were all telling me the same thing. Spend the time finding the right property manager because they can make or break your, rental property. So I just spent the time interviewing them. And then it's like, well, spend the time to find the right mortgage broker because they will shop around for the best loans for you. I was like, oh, a good idea. Okay, I'll do that. And I was kind of just going down this list of these things that I heard and or read.
Distilling down information you receive from multiple sources, recognizing building a team is one of the biggest strengths, which we could dive into in a bit. But now let's fast forward and you feel comfortable with your team. You're now looking for a property. Walk us through your journey of, your first property. Were there a lot of properties you saw beforehand? Was it, one and done? What were you looking for in this investment?
In my mind, I kind of built this buy box. So the buy box is like the criteria that I'm looking for my first, rental, investment and rental property. It's many different things. So I mentioned single family homes. So I was kind of ignoring, everything else. I was ignoring, duplexes, quads, 5 or 8 unit buildings. I was ignoring, storage units, all that. So single family homes, it's one criteria. We had recently, had our first kid. I understand how much comes with children or a kid. And as a new parent, I also appreciated how we just had stuff everywhere. I wouldn't want to be moving every year because my rental lease was, up, and things that I would be totally fine with doing, before having kids or as a bachelor. In my mind, it's like, I'm going to try to find, properties that are more likely to have families be interested in them. So I was looking for single family homes. Then I meant maybe a backyard because it would be nice for a dog or for the kids to be able to play around it. And you need enough bedrooms. So I was looking at 3 bedrooms and let's say 2 bathrooms because there's one for the parents and one for the guests and the kids. Now I'm looking at single family homes with a backyard, 3 bed, 2 bath, and I'm ignoring everything else. And then I was looking for homes with a basement, stuff, and a playroom, and all in a decent school district. So all these things were criteria kind of in my buy box, in addition to sort of what minimum cash on cash return I would want from this investment property. So you can find 3 bed, 2 bath homes anywhere, but it doesn't mean that if you were to buy them as an investment property, they would necessarily, return you any money. They might not even cash flow, so that return is also part of kind of your criteria and your buy box. So once I narrowed that down to exactly what I was looking for, then, a given market might go from, 50,000 single family homes on the market for sale to maybe 1,000 once you, kind of narrow things down to that extent. Yeah, analyzed 100 deals just to practice and check myself until I found one or several that kind of met my criteria in my buy box, and then started offering on these. Making an offer on a property doesn't mean you necessarily get it. So you offer, you get declined. You offer again on a different property, you get declined. So I probably sent out, a dozen offers before the first one was accepted. I was kind of practicing that process and muscle, and I could see things, and I was way more efficient at doing it after doing 100, 200, 300, deal analyses. I think 2 weeks it was after we closed on our first rental property. There was another one that our criteria, we extended an offer on it and got that one accepted. So within, a month, we went from, 0 rentals to 2. It was fun journey.
Super impressive. I love that. It's amazing that you were analyzing so many deals. And I think that it's critical as well for newbies to exercise that muscle to analyze a lot of deals. Mm-hmm. Where do you think the switch needs to be to actually act on putting an offer versus like learning on how to analyze a deal?
That's a great question. In hindsight, I feel like maybe I did too much consuming of information for too long, and maybe I did too many deal analyses for too long before I actually took action and submitted offers, probably because I wasn't confident, because I was scared, because I wasn't sure about stuff. If you have a well-defined buy box and you analyze deals, after a while, they're all the exact same thing, right? You should know roughly what your insurance costs are going to be because you're looking at the same type of property and you spoke to an insurance broker to say, what would insurance be on this property? So you should know roughly what the property taxes are going to be. You've already identified your property manager and building your team, like I was saying before, so you know what their fee structure is going to be like. You've looked at so many of these that kind of the quality of bathrooms and kitchens and things like that one. So after a while, I was just doing the same thing over and over and over with a lot of value other than comforting me. And in hindsight, it's easy to say, but I probably should have started offering sooner to start exercising that muscle as well, being rejected and understanding that I don't have to offer what's listed on Zillow. That's what the seller wants, but it's not necessarily what's going to make my rental property work. And there was an exact moment in time or an exact event that would qualify as now I'm ready. Generally speaking, taking action sooner rather than later and learning from that action is probably better than trying to just consume and learn from books. or podcast.
Putting offers. A lot of newbies that I work with, they think that when they put an offer down, like they are locked into this property. Like this is it.
Yeah.
They can't get out. They're 100% getting it. I'm like, one is, could be other offers down. They may not even accept
Yeah.
the offer even if you're the only one. And then second, there's an inspection period that you can exit. Do you also find that newbies have a hesitation to put offers down?
100%. I still do. Multiple, double digit number of properties into this. Every time it's like, did I really do the right thing? But then I catch myself and I'm like, well, I still have 12 ways to get out of this if I want. So it's not the end of the deal. Then I sleep better at night and all of that. But to your point, it actually even starts with it, because you submit an offer doesn't mean the seller is going to accept it. Right. And I think last year we submitted 60 offers last year to close one property. So you just get used to rejection after a while.
It becomes the norm. So
Yeah.
with that, you were able to acquire two properties in only a month's time. I assume that with your buy box being as tailored as it is, that you probably expanded your portfolio. So what does your portfolio look like today, and has it been in the same market?
Almost entirely the same market. We invest in St. Louis, Missouri, and we invest in Northwest Indiana. And we're not looking at anything else in terms of markets for two main reasons. The first one is our current investment portfolio in those markets. They're working just fine for us, in terms of returns and headaches and, getting tenants and all of that. So it's smooth sailing. But maybe more importantly, because we now have a very solid team in both of those markets, it's much quicker and easier for me to find the next property, potentially acquire it or buy it, onboard it into like the systems and whatnot. And it just goes so much faster. So whereas it might have taken me, I don't know, days to analyze, get an offer ready, go back and forth with my realtor, ask all my newbie questions before, I submit an offer when we were getting started. It takes me literally minutes now where I analyze a deal. I know if it's going to meet our criteria or not. I can shoot a text to my agent to say, offer this, here's the address, and then we're off to the races. And that efficiency, I have it, and one has it because they've built that solid team in that particular market. So we have 10 single family homes across those two markets. And then we're working on some Airbnb projects as well, but not in the US.
Okay, that's super exciting. And I think you mentioned something that's very critical, which is speed. You're able to act on speed now because you have built this team, because of your efficiency. And right now in real estate, because there's a lot of competition, prior to maybe like 5 years ago, wasn't as much. Now there's a lot more resources and such. Speed is everything. And having a coach, a program, or some sort of facilitated way to look at things can help newbies reach their goals even faster. So what is the Remote Real Estate Academy, and how do you guys help people who are working professionals get started in investing?
Thanks for asking about that. So essentially, after several years of, my wife and I investing remotely into real estate, that's interesting. You have, rentals in, thousands of miles away, and saying, how do you do that? I'd like to do the same. Can you show me? Can you teach me? And kind of organically, of course, want to give back to, friends, family, coworkers, and the community in general. And you start doing that more and more. And my partner on the Remote Real Estate Academy, Aaron, exact same story, just he lives somewhere different. One of the things that he and I realize is very often online, again, forums, podcasts, books, all of that, often the narrative is get into real estate so that you can quit your job like next year, right? That's how quickly you're going to do it. And we have a bit of a contrarian opinion where I, for one, and my wife, and I believe Aaron, my partner, we love our jobs. We like what we're doing. They actually help fund our real estate, portfolio as well for a better future. I'm not constrained. I'm very fortunate to be in a place where my wife and my jobs are not constraining, where, we can do kind of, what we want. And yet at the same time, we are building and growing our rental portfolio and managing our rental portfolio. So we got together thinking, we should provide something more structured specifically targeted, sorry, to those folks who are busy parents or busy professionals and who are interested in starting in real estate investing, essentially, without necessarily sacrificing their lives. Aaron and I, we had to figure out how to make it work because we were full-time professionals. Well, we are full-time professionals and parents of young kids. All of the systems, tooling, documents, scripts, everything that we use every day to build and manage our rental portfolio, we just packaged in an online kind of course that comes with a community of other remote real estate investors, and access to Aaron and myself as well for just like coaching and questions and things like that. So it's basically an online community for busy professionals who are interested in investing in real estate without sacrificing their lives. And they have access to an online course, a community, and coaching, essentially.
Providing so much value, and it all came just from getting the same questions over and over again from peers, from family, realizing this is a need, and then collaborating with Aaron to basically systematize this process and offer coaching. Because with real estate, you can learn directly from a course, but unless you're talking with other individuals or people who have done this before, it's still hard to do it all on your own because you're going to have natural questions. Is that why you introduced the coaching, or was it originally just a course at first?
No, so I think the course came from just us, repeating the same kind of, somebody, for example, how do I pick a market? And I've told this story 100 times to the 100 people asking me this question, right? So it's like, okay, next time I'm just going to record myself doing it to say, here's how I did it, or here's how one can do it. And then imagine that for all the newbie questions that might, arise. So how do I analyze a deal, and how do I interview a property manager, or whatever. So the course got built like that out of efficiency. It's like, I don't want to have the same hour-long conversation, 10 times. And I could just say, well, I've done it once, it's recorded, go watch it here. So that's how the course, in a sense, got created. But to your point, we also noticed that even if the theory is clear and understood for, say, analyzing a deal, as you're looking at two different properties, they're not going to be the same. The theory, sure, is the same for both, but this one is a brand new kitchen and this one doesn't. So what does that mean for my, rental property and the returns? And that's where very often we find people have questions, and, a book or an article or just a video on an online course is not enough, because you wouldn't be able to go through every kind of use case or corner case. So that's where the coaching aspect, kind of comes in. It's like, well, I have this particular situation, Aaron and Nathan, what should I do? How can you help? What do you think? Type thing.
That is very useful. So along with being able to run a deal by the both of you, do you also have webinars or any other community events that help to bring people together?
We do. So we do what we'll do on a regular basis. It will run workshops, on like specific topics, picking your insurance, or what are different kinds of insurance for, real estate investors, or picking your market, or things like that. So we'll run those. We also are starting to increasingly invite like experts and guests over to run their own webinars. So, different tools that we use that we like and use every day. So have the creators of those tools come in and do more, complete and holistic presentations to the community. And then we have just like hot seat sessions. So where, community members have specific problems that they want help with, then we'll hop on a kind of community group call and tackle a specific problem. So those are some of the things that we have, in addition to just publishing, articles and help content and kind of weekly real estate related news that's relevant to investor type stuff. So we try to provide as much value as possible, basically.
Yeah, getting feedback on potential deals, being able to learn from experts, being able to get news articles. So you're really doing everything, which is amazing. And I'm also lurking in the community. So for anyone
Yes, you
who
are.
wants some tips, I will gladly throw them in the community as well. And Nathan, what do you see for your portfolio in the future, and how would you like to continue growing it?
That's a great question. And at the same time, I don't like that question because I don't have a good answer. In the sense that my wife and I have always started this for a better future. I think having one, two, or three rentals, you don't need 30, you don't need 50, already helps with a better future. That said, we're still in a growth phase, right? I don't have a number of rentals as a goal, right? I don't necessarily have, at least not today, like a specific rental income goal like a lot of people might have. One of my first goals was get the first rental. Then that goal changed to, get to three or four to see kind of what it's like to manage more than just the one, see if I still like it, if it works for me, if it's not too draining in terms of time, effort, money, all of that. When I pass that, it's like, well, I want a goal where our portfolio is large enough that it generates enough income every year to be the down payment for the next rental property so that I don't have to come out of pocket anymore. So we've reached that goal as well. And now it's just a question of, this is kind of a flywheel that started, and we could just keep adding as long as they make sense. We will never buy a property that doesn't meet our buying criteria or our buy box. We'll never buy a property that doesn't provide, say, the returns that we're looking for. But as long as we can find our buy box, we'll just keep growing, essentially, because it's kind of a flywheel that's started now, and we can just let it grow. And when we have enough, too much, whatever, we'll stop.
Excellent. Well, tremendous job and all the progress you've made. Looking forward to continuing
Thank
to
you.
watch your journey as well as be a part of the community. And for those that want to learn more, where can they reach out to you and learn more about the Remote Real Estate Academy?
They can just head over to remoterealestateacademy.com, and there's a form there they can fill out to get like a free email course. And that's relevant because it's hopefully valuable information for people who are looking to get started, but also those emails are written directly by Aaron and myself. So if you reply to those, you get in direct contact with us. So it's just remoterealestateacademy.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nathan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Errol, for having me. Really had a great time. Thank you.